Hello and welcome to the SamMobile Podcast. I'm your host, Ben, and welcome to episode 5. And we do have a special guest, but before we actually allow the special guest to be introduced and introduce him, we're pretty much going to be talking about today's topic, which is all to do with how Samsung, with their software on Android, have basically just become the default Android OEM when it comes to software and how that's come about. And as we do, when a special guest is here, we pretty much ask them the hot seat question of what their expectations is when it comes to Samsung for the rest of 2022. So far with what they've seen in 2022 into the next year. So don't go anywhere. Sit back, relax, get your popcorn, get your meal, get your drink, because this is going to be a good one. So we do have a special guest, as you can see, but I'm not going to take the spotlight away from him. He's a dear friend and colleague. I've known him for however many years in this space, and I'm really, really glad that he's here. And I called him on the last minute, but without wasting much time, let me pass it over to the man himself.
Hello, I am Ryan Thomas, tech analyst, former tech journalist. I've known Ben for many years. We talk about smartphones. I mean, don't get us started because we'll never stop. You know what I mean? So yeah, today's all about Samsung, and I'm excited to be here. Thanks, Ben.
Oh, man. Ryan, thank you so much for joining. Look, for our audio and video listeners, definitely make sure you like, subscribe, follow us on all your favorite audio platforms for the podcast, as obviously SamMobile TV on YouTube as well. Follow us so you can see the video version as well. And a little bit of backstory about today, right? Today's Wednesday, and Wednesday is usually the day that I like to record podcasts as a bare late minimum, ideally Tuesdays, and I did not want to be on a lonely podcast again like you heard on episode 1, and I kind of threw a little bit of a Hail Mary, and Ryan actually came through on the clutch, which I highly appreciate. So thank you very much for joining, my friend. How have you been? Talk to me. How have you been?
I've been great. Well, since gracefully leaving Android Authority, I kind of took a step back from YouTube and from all this tech stuff because I've been doing it quite a lot. And I've been doing computer repairs, which I've been loving because I've been doing that since I was a kid. So it means that when I do take a look at smartphones again, I kind of have a fresh perspective on it, if you know what I mean. I'm not jaded. I'm not feeling like all washed out with all the different, bits of info. And yeah, it's been good. It's been healthy, I think, and a fresh perspective on things is always good.
See, this is exactly why I needed you here, because I think such a topic like Android, your former Android authority, even before then, you have heavily vested in, reviewing different devices, predominantly Android, especially just building up from Feltec days, as I like to still remind you of.
Of course. Never forget those.
You never forget those. And I mean, what was great is that you really touched on a lot of the used devices that people, would be more accustomed to, especially for your demographic, age groups and different stuff like that, and just the value that it can bring as well. So having that fresh perspective is really good. It's really good because I think a topic like Android OS, right? Formerly where we had them as, dessert names all those years ago before things, took a left turn. I still remember 4.4 Kit Kat just for the branding. It sticks out to me so much, and I kind of do miss them. But we wanted to really discuss how Samsung have really done not even a 180. It just feels like a whole new brand and a whole new company when it comes to software and software support, and what almost feels like, especially when at the end of the unpacked keynote for S22 and Tab S8, during 9th of February, that surprise of having 4 years of OS version updates back to 5 years of security, on top of not just announcing it, but more as of recently, they've just been on the ball when it comes to monthly security updates. And I mean, sometimes a day or two before the new month actually starts, right? And if there's any bugs like they are on the ball to get that fixed with multiple updates within that same month. Good or bad is how you see it. But just the approach and the mindset to software, I almost feel like they've just become like the default version of Android now. And I know me and you use very similar devices back to back to back in terms of testing or actually devices that we own ourselves. How do you feel about that statement with Samsung being like that? Do you agree with it partially or not?
I definitely agree with it. And I'm a big advocate for is keeping stuff long term, because I work and repair on things that are, you want to keep for as long as possible. So much stuff's going to landfill. There's no need for that.
Oh
and with Samsung taking a massive, exactly like a 180, it's just mental. I mean, when I first started reviewing smartphones on a regular basis, I would have started on the Galaxy S4 and S5.
Good. We're on the same page. Things, I was thinking the same thing. We're on the same page.
Those things those things were rough when it came to software support long term. And not only that, but they kind of, when they got released, their software was already pretty heavy. I mean, TouchWiz was a heavy, bloated OS before you even considered long-term support. So the fact that, recently reviewing the Pixel and it having, in my opinion, of course, this is subjective, as good a software as One UI on even something like an S20 or an S21, not necessarily the latest and greatest, I feel like it is a big change, and it's not something that I've noticed. It's something that's kind of crept up on me, and I've thought, actually, that's really weird, isn't it? How we would have associated before the Pixel with the newest, the latest and greatest software, with the best cohesion, and the way that it's built specifically for that hardware. But the fact that the recent Samsungs, are as good, if not better these days, is kind of crazy. And I think that's a good thing, because of course, more competition means generally the better for the consumer, because brands are competing for your attention and for your money. And Samsung at the moment, I think, is just absolutely killing it.
You see, I always try and listen and pick out things, right? The one thing that you said that stood out to me is that it's not something you notice, it's something that it crept up on you. And I don't think you're alone on that. Here's why I want to go back in terms of time, if we time travel. And when you said the S4 and the S3, those phones, it resonated with me, because that was the 2013, 2014 era of smartphones, when things were really at that fresh infancy, right? Android was named after, desserts in alphabetical order, the fun times, right? You had the Nexus series at the time, and also you had the GPE, the Google Play Edition devices of OEM versions. So that time was a very, very unique period in terms of how these phones were being treated and software was being done. And the reason why I want to spot that out is I vividly remember, and again, this was me working in telecoms retail, where I was having to sell these devices when they were coming out, right? Fun times. Yeah. And I still miss, doing that job in terms of just what it taught me and how much it drew me closer to loving consumer electronics like mobile phones and tablets and laptops and computers. I vividly remember that for you to get the latest version of Android from Samsung, you had to get their flagship phone. You had to get their flagship phone, and the previous flagship would not get the software update until maybe midway year or the next year later. That's how they did not care. When I say they did not care for software in terms of regularity, let alone, what is happening now in terms of comparing and contrasting. Now, you could probably put it down to the fact that there were a bit of partnerships where they were one of the ODMs or OEMs that were pushing the Nexus platform, from the Galaxy Nexus, and so forth, maybe. But generally speaking, that was the association with them, that they made it as an incentive of, hey, if you want the latest software, we are only going to put it on our latest flagship when it comes up for you to get that. Even if that flagship that you had 6 months ago, i.e. a Note, or a year ago, i.e. an S series, is more than powerful and adequate enough, you're not going to get it. And that was just bonkers to me in terms of just how you took, like what you're saying about preservation and things being used for a long period of time, right? Compared to now, where we've pretty much known the Nexus platform that ended up changing to the Pixel in 2016, and just how the Android software developed from then, right? And I remember you did a great video on the original Pixel, getting its final software update on Android 10, I believe. I don't know if you can remind me.
I remember that.
And it's something that you were praising based on that's how it should be. That's how it should be. And if you compare it to the relevant flagship phone from Samsung, which was the S7 and S7 Edge at the time, they were much, much better phones, hardware and just aesthetics wise, but they didn't last that long because of the software being so limited in terms of support, right? So when you say it crept up on you, I fully get it, because a lot of us have that kind of distinct memory of that's how we've always known Samsung, you know? So for them to get to this point, what do you think it took for Samsung to get to that point internally? Just kind of maybe thinking out the box on what their mindset was for them to think, hang on, we need to actually not just be on the level of what OnePlus used to be with at least 2 years or 3 years, but actually we need to really genuinely show them that we can get to that half a decade to match the likes of the fruit company.
I reckon it probably, there are a couple of reasons. One, they probably understand that we as consumers have less and less disposable income. So we're not going to buy, even if you did make it so that the latest was the only one to have the best software or whatever, we just wouldn't buy them, you know, at the same rate. So there's obviously that. And then secondly, I think that over the past couple of years, OnePlus, which you used as an example, is a massive sort of example of why and how you can use like a good guy sort of idea to promote your products. So Samsung's a good guy because they give you better software for longer, right? Well, back then it was OnePlus and Google. Now that Samsung's doing that, they're appealing to more people, because people are, instead of seeing Samsung as a huge corporation, they're seeing Samsung as, you know, the corporation that wants to help you out. Now, whether that's true or not is neither here nor there, but that's what it looks like, right? So I think having that sort of, you can almost trust them to give you a smartphone that will last you a number of years is an incentive to buy that smartphone. You wouldn't go out and spend £1,000 on a smartphone if you knew that it was only going to last you 18 months. But if you can basically guarantee it's going to last you 3-4 years, then you're more than likely to do that. I mean, that's what, £250 a year on a smartphone. I think that's fairly reasonable in the current space if you want something like that. Obviously, different people are going to have different budgets, but I think if you're after an ultra high-end smartphone, that's probably quite reasonable. And that's a lot of the reason why people go with Apple, because of their long-term software support. So if Samsung can offer, you know, a crazy long software support like that, but with what I would say is the much nicer hardware of Samsung. So you get the more crazy camera systems, the better screens, the bigger batteries, all that kind of thing. It's kind of a recipe for success. And it wouldn't surprise me. I haven't looked at Samsung's recent sales numbers, but it wouldn't surprise me if, you know, recent Samsung sales have gone up and the market share has increased versus what it was before.
And you see, when you even say market share, I think just, you know, brand perception.
You
know, brand perception, stock as well, in terms of stocks and shares go up when you announce stuff like that and you back it up, right? I love the angle you've come from in terms of appealing more to the consumer as a loyalist brand in a way, right? We care about you. And here's where I believe it more. Again, like you said, that discussion of, you know, whether they are like that or not is hearsay, and it's another discussion all in itself, right? Consumer friendliness. But when we had our product briefing on the Galaxy A53 and A33, right, there was no mention of those devices getting that level of software support as well, right? In terms of for 4 years with 5 years of security. And I didn't even bother following up with an email just to say, hey, are these devices going to get it as well? Because in my mind is these are below £400 devices. They're mid-range. Yes, I know there's a new 5nm platform with the Exynos 1280, all of that stuff. I just don't see that they're going to do it. I think that's more of a flagship incentive to pull you in to give you that. But no, they, you know, lo and behold, that's something that they're going to do for those devices, which I'm not going to lie, I was probably doubly more impressed at that level of commitment compared to what is expected of a flagship in Android now, you know. And that's where it really made me think and start going ahead, where I'm thinking, hang on a minute, when, like what you said, how did this happen? When did this happen? Why didn't they send us the memo? You know, it's almost like a whole new, it's like, where's the original Samsung, or what did you do to him or her? Bring that person back. Well, actually not. Let's not. But it's more of a case of, this is just such a refreshing turnaround. And the real acid test that I've been seeing with my unlocked model of the S22, S22 Plus, and S22 Ultra is the monthly updates. I've never seen monthly updates that quick, that timely, that on it to keep it stable, keep it patched, fix any bugs, or, you know, patch any things that just haven't been working like this. It's almost like, again, thinking out of the box and looking how the inner workings of the company are. It almost feels like they've generally either created a whole separate division that really take care of this from the ground up, manage it on a maintenance level. You know, I don't know if that is the case, but do you think that is something that they've actually invested in?
It's very possible. I mean, you look at the size of Samsung, it's definitely got the resources to be able to do that. But maybe it's just more of a change in direction from just the management themselves. You know, they don't have to change anything. Maybe it's just
that's true.
Maybe they thought, you know, maybe there's some way we can increase popularity. I mean, there's been so much behind. I mean, look at the Nothing company. Is it Nothing?
Yes.
From Carl Pei. And how
Akis, yeah.
and you see how like these sorts of companies that come in and do things a little bit differently, a little bit more consumer oriented, they pay off, at least in the short term. We saw OnePlus long term hasn't quite really maintained, I think, the kind of hype and everything, but at the same time, for the first 3-4 years, did pretty decently. So if Samsung, you know, could do that, and it sees that in the reality, in the real world, that does work, then why not give it a go? I think they got every reason to.
And I think what you said makes a lot more sense of maintaining the hype. You know, let's drive that in already. And I think what makes you struggle to maintain the hype is when you become your own worst enemy, right? As someone that was X1 Plus as well, you know, that's something that is public knowledge. I think about at the peak when, let's just say, the OnePlus 7T was launched, for example, right? OnePlus had access to Android 10 first. They had access to, that was the highlight of the 7T and the 7T Pro McLaren edition launch, that a representative from Android actually came on stage and said, the first device you're going to be seeing with the latest version of Android is actually going to be from OnePlus, and it's not going to be from a Pixel device. That was their peak next to the 7 generation in 2019, you see. And not maintaining that hype is when you become your own worst enemy, i.e. when you don't cut your cloth to your size, right? You don't honor your promise, and you still have teething problems in a position where you shouldn't be anymore. You know, whether it's not getting the right carrier deals, not having the right availability, not having the right buy-in, and then what you were actually known for, you go in a different direction, i.e., you know, not taking any shots, but focusing a lot on camera partnerships with expensive brands, but forgetting to maintain and elevate the infrastructure that is around what kept you good. Your software, right? The buying of your software, how you looked after your software over a long period of time that made your devices feel that much more worth it over a long period of time, you see. And not doing that, then you open up potholes of, you've trapped people in an expectation, but they're not going to get it, right? You're on the notion of, I thought I was going to get 2-3 years, but yet I don't even get the latest version of the software when it's announced anymore, you know, let alone the monthly updates that I should. And there's stutters and bugs. Like, who are the team that are dealing with this, right? And that's where I just want to make sure that Samsung doesn't get comfortable and go down that road, you see. I would like to say they won't, because again, like what you said, they are a much bigger company. They've got the money, they've got the infrastructure. If management higher up and mid-level have changed completely or had a reform in terms of mindset, you know, plus obviously access to their devices is so much easier globally on all their product ranges from their retail stores, third-party partners, as well as carrier partners. I see them really taking a stand where I could genuinely see them get to 5 years of OS version updates and beyond, you know. But the main thing is not to become their own worst enemy. What other things do you consider that could be their potential downfall to maintain such hype for that next 4 or 5 years?
I think it really does depend on their sort of willingness to really commit to this change and really commit to this whole thing, because they could do the next, so including this year, say 3 years of these phones that get 5 years of software updates. But past that, like, when does their statement and when does their sort of whole message start to be able to fizzle out and they can slowly taper that off? Because I imagine from a business point of view, it costs quite a bit to maintain software.
Oh yeah.
You're probably gonna see it taper off at some point, because there's diminishing returns with them investing the amount of money into keeping the software going versus the people who haven't upgraded to the next phone, if you know what I mean. Because why would you upgrade? That you've got to balance giving that long software support so that you appear like a really good brand, because don't get me wrong, Samsung is a great brand, but for the consumer, maintain that image, but at the same time not overdeveloping and not overcommitting to the point where no one upgrades to your latest devices because they find their software just fine. So I mean, for us, for the consumers, every phone should get 5 years, and
half a decade.
Most of us are on 2-3 year contracts, so regardless of how long the phone lasts, we'll probably just get the next one, or the next one in like 2 generations or 3 generations. It's gonna happen eventually. It's just the convenience of mobile plans. But I think maybe the downfall could be regressing on the message, and that actually doing more damage than if they didn't put out this message to start with. Because you put out that message and you regress on it, and you look like really, really bad compared to a company that was already known for being like not too bad with software upgrades. The Galaxy S8 and S9 weren't actually that bad. So the S20 just has set another precedent basically for having loads of software support. So yeah, I think it's going to be how long they can keep it up, but from a business standpoint, also not keeping it up, because they need to find like a fine line there, like maybe
the balance.
They need to find a balance. Maybe 3 years is fine, but like, because you could keep going with this, you could give like Apple level like 7 years or whatever it is. But I think there's a limit. Maybe they stick at 4 years. Maybe they don't need to do 5 years of actual OS upgrades. As much as we might like that, maybe there's you just keep it enough so that people are buying the new smartphones, but at the same time, we get all good software support so that those of us who can't afford to upgrade every year or whatever can still use our phones reliably with the banking apps, with everything securely, and also get new features, because phones are always introducing new software features, whether they be for the camera, for the home screen, just little widgets here and there,
or even things like the ultra wideband chip. Stuff like that is technically new hardware. For smart tags and stuff like that. And I love the example that you gave. I'll go on a slight tangent and come to gaming, for example. Microsoft were in that position as well with their back compatibility team. So Microsoft actually had, or Xbox specifically, had a dedicated team that were tasked with dealing with backwards compatibility all the way back to the first generation Xbox through all the way to the Series S and the Series X, but that team is no longer there now, because that library of games that they were able to optimize from all those generations is done. You see, so the commitment to back compatibility is actually sorted. You see, so I love that, because it just reminded me of that there is that time and balance of when do you taper it off, when do you dissolve it, and when does it plateau where it's pretty much ridden on a wave. I'll add to that and say that they definitely have to honor it up to the first device that they talked about that will have that benefit, i.e. S22 series and even S21 series should have the 4 years of OS version updates or 4 versions. That means S22 should be good all the way up to Android 16. S21 should be good all the way up to Android 15, right? From then, backed with the security updates, especially with how they've been handling the staggered update for Android 12 on all the other devices, S10 series, S20 series, yada, yada, yada. That would be the real, place for them where they can really look at it and see what is the balance that how we can get it done and get it sorted. You see, so coming back to that's actually a very good way to look at it based on company expenses, the cost of it, the value of it. It's an interesting way to look at it, and I'll see how far it goes. And I think one thing to add to that is software to hardware balance, right? Like what you said before, it's really also down to you as the consumer to look after your device as best as possible. But at the same time, gone are the days of the Note 4 and before, where you can actually just remove the battery and put a brand new one yourself and have maximum battery health. Because we know lithium polymer and lithium ion batteries are the chief culprit to degrade the quickest. And as a very, very predominant used phone reviewer, that's your foundation. Do you find that to be the chief culprit amongst any other things that affect that kind of usage over a period of time, 2-3 years?
Yeah, definitely. I think the battery plays a massive part in why people upgrade their phones in the first place. I mean, the amount of people who are close to me even who have bought new phones purely because the battery has been dying in their phone, and it just so happens that it would be nice to have a better camera or a nicer screen, but actually I could keep using this if the battery wasn't so awful. It's a huge reason why people upgrade and why people change their phones. So it plays, I mean, it would be hard to speak for everyone, but I'd say it's at least sort of 30-40% of the reasons why people upgrade. On a slight tangent, we get a lot of laptops come in at work for the same reason. Yes. But of course, with a lot of the laptops, unless you're talking silly high end, most of them you can just buy a new battery for and slot it in and it works absolutely fine. And honestly, that does keep most laptops going. If you look after your phone, if you don't crack it or whatever, and the same with your laptop, if you don't drop it or spill something on it, they just kind of keep going as long as you look after them. It's a bit like a car, really. Like,
it's true. It's true. Same principle, right?
You look after it and it will look after you. And I mean, it would be nice to get removable batteries again, but at the same time, I actually really value the IP ratings, and I think I wouldn't even mind just staying where we are, because if you look after your phone, you don't fast charge it constantly, you kind of regular charge it, and on a lot of the new,
I feel attacked now, because
on a lot of the new phones, on a lot of the new phones where they've got the charges to 80%, and then the last 20% is
protect battery.
That works a treat, honestly. On a site like, I've actually researched some of this stuff. I'm not a complete idiot, as it turns out, and actually,
you never are, mate.
It does affect it, and it makes a difference. It keeps your phone lasting longer for longer, and so I think, I mean, honestly, phones could go on for 4-5 years with batteries inside them, not have to change them as often. Of course, batteries have got bigger as well. We're not talking 3,000 milliamp hours anymore. We're talking 5,000, some of them 6,000 milliamp hour batteries. So I think the trade-off is there. Obviously, if people want to fast charge their batteries all the time, I get it, because I often forget to charge my phone, so I'll just stick it
worst.
on. But
I'm a sucker for it, man. I'm sorry.
But also, Ben, like you got a different phone in your pocket every month.
Oh,
so
true,
you know what I mean? So it doesn't affect you the same way that it might do a lot of others.
It's like a first world problem when it comes to. Do you know why I love this angle that you've come from, right? I want to ask you this. Do you think the mass public should have better knowledge on going for battery maintenance or battery service after a few years if they notice that things are not holding up well, right? Because in my gut feeling tells me that since the days of the removable battery being gone, a lot of people that buy these phones don't realize that having a battery swap in 3 years or 4 years can be the hugest difference in refreshing your phone and making it feel like a brand new phone from day one, especially if you've looked after it, put in a case, screen protector. From the job that you do, and also from my history as someone that worked in, telecoms retail and kind of left as soon as things became, built-in batteries, and I, wasn't a few years. Do you think people that come in have enough knowledge that that's something that is a big difference maker if they did?
So, what do you mean? Like, is it obvious that people know that the battery is the issue? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, and if they do a swap, that can be the difference in just giving them a fresh experience.
Right,
the phone feeling brand new again.
I don't know. To be honest,
I don't think they do. I'll be honest. I'm going to play devil's advocate and say I don't think they do.
I think some people know because their phone or laptop will say 100% and then within 5 minutes be at 0, and then it's really obvious that the battery is the issue. But I think as a little bit of an almost a bad answer to that question, but the one I'm going to give is that a lot of people don't want to fix their stuff anymore. They just want the new one, and they'll just chuck it away anyway.
That's true.
And you get a lot of that, and that honestly is a shame because landfill. It's not good. And honestly, you can get. I mean, people that we're in currently a horrific financial state. I mean, not to get political, but in the world, let's just say on a global scale, we're in a bad financial state. Yeah. So why would you, why would you, I find it silly that to just chuck something away that may be worth a few £100 still for, let's say, a £50 fix that could really make a difference to how you use it. Obviously, like you said, people don't, or like you alluded to, people don't really know that could make a difference. Yeah. And it's only when it's silly obvious, like the battery is swollen and cracked the back or something like that. Do you know what I mean?
Gosh, swollen batteries is another damn thing to just even consider. I love that angle because although it sounds like a bad answer, that is just a harsh reality, right? I think down to good marketing, good advertising, the feeling of always having a nice new thing. Mate, I'm guilty of it. I love doing unboxing videos. It just feels like Christmas to me every time doing them, right? So I get that dopamine rush of that new thing just is better. It will be better. There'll be such a huge difference, right? I think that's actually an answer that I wasn't actually thinking of. I was actually thinking of where I think OEMs or these manufacturers should actually communicate it better to them, but then at the same time, that is too pro-consumer in a way, in a sense of, wait, we do that. What's the reason that in 3 years or 4 years when they should get the new phone, they're not going to get it now? Because they're still going to keep that phone and it's going to feel fresh because it's 100% battery. The battery is not going to fluctuate in terms of voltage to give the maximum sustained performance to the system on a chip, display, and all these other different things, hoping they don't have screen burn. Your answer was actually much more spot on than I was expecting it to be, just saying.
Cheers,
threw
man.
me off and it brought me
Would
down
you expect me to be a
like,
complete idiot?
No, it wasn't that. I thought I was being too clever. Put it this way, I was just being too clever and it has to be this way. But actually, I thought about it and I thought, with how yearly, monthly mobile plans with carriers are so easy to, hey, after 1 year, hey, just bring the old phone if you're bored. They will say that to you. If you're bored, bring it in. We won't charge you anything for it. Actually, if you were to sell it, the value will be a lot lower. So actually, if you trade it in, it's going to actually be more money that you make. And then your price plan stays the same. You don't pay nothing. We just give you the phone. And when you hear how easy that sounds, and trust me, as someone that's gone through it, it is that damn easy. Yeah. You're kind of roped and sucked in. Roped and sucked in. But that pretty much kind of brings, I mean, unless there's anything else that you want to add, for sure.
Message to all SamMobile viewers: don't chuck your stuff away if it's a little bit. Just fix it, because honestly, it makes a difference. It saves you money, does the world some good. And not to get preachy, but the phone is still more than good enough
It is. And go for a battery maintenance replacement. It's not that expensive. If you go to a Samsung service center, if you have one, they will do a great job and it's worth paying. The phone will feel fresh. But of course, if you do want a new phone, you can. But we are just saying, kind of directing you into the way of these things.
Yeah, affiliate links in the description. Like, let's get a new one.
Oh, man. But yeah, that is the main topic out of the way, where we've pretty much had our lovely discussion, as I would like to say, in regards to, Samsung effectively with One UI have kind of crept up on all of us and made their version of Android pretty much the default version of Android, the de facto standard of Android now. And, touching on the points of if they're going to stay the course, if they're going to keep the hype up, and also just kind of, gone down to the balance of how maintaining the software support balance to how you maintain the hardware of your phone makes a difference to really making it stand. So hope you all enjoyed it. We are pretty much going to take a quick water break. Do not miss us too much. Don't go anywhere, because we'll be right back very shortly. And we are back. Hope you didn't go too far. Hope you didn't miss us too much. Obviously, we missed you all. Appreciate you all tuning in. It's been fun as always. And when we have a special guest, if you are new to the SamMobile Podcast, it's kind of just been a natural flow thing that's just happened, right? Whenever we get a guest, virtually or in person, we put them in a hot seat and ask them the hot seat question. And it's really around expectations for Samsung for the rest of 2022, the rest of the year, into what will tip into the next year, which is 2023. The reason why is this: I feel like this has been Samsung's most jam-packed Q1 in terms of product releases and events, right? CES with the S21 FE on the 3rd of January. You had the Samsung Freestyle projector. Coming off the back, you had the S22 series with the Tab S8 series. And then, you had Mobile World Congress with the Galaxy Book 2 Pro and Book 2 Pro 360 laptops. And then obviously, closing off into April right now that we're in, the Galaxy A53, A33, A73, and all the other A series. So, man, they've been busy, right? Samsung has kind of really been out there, which it's a good problem to have, but there's been a lot to cover. And it kind of shows that although things have slowed down a little bit, they are on a roll. There's a lot happening with them. So, Ryan, as our guest, I kind of want to ask you the hot seat question: that what is your expectations of Samsung for the rest of 2022, tipping into 2023?
Okay, so I don't actually follow much tech these days, but one thing that has stood out to me is the whole Samsung QD-OLED display thing, right?
We're talking display, people. Display, yes. So our first guest talks about display. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, you've seen LG with their OLED. Let's just go with TVs. Yeah, OLED TVs. And they've kind of not necessarily been dominating, because of course, I'm sure market share says otherwise. But you hear a lot about LG OLEDs. And Samsung's had the QLEDs, right? Which go, I believe, into other models like Hisense, I believe, use Samsung QLED displays. Yes. And they've been looking decent, but they haven't really done much to completely compete, in my opinion, with OLED. Yeah. Of course, you get the brightness increase. I believe it's like 50% brighter to even 100% brighter because of the constant backlight versus OLED. But QD OLED is really interesting, because this is a different take on it now, So like LG has brought out their C2 line of TVs, for example. That is, I would say, iterative on their C1. Their C1 was already good, which was iterative on the CX. Yeah. And then from the C9. So as much as they have improved generation on generation, it's been fairly slow, because they're like, that's just to go from their C9 was such an impressive TV to start with. It was kind of hard to really jump up from there. Yeah. Whereas the QLED, whilst I've seen them in person, they are lovely looking TVs. QD OLED goes a different route to try and attack LG. Oh, yeah. And so it's a different kind of approach, which I think is interesting, especially as OLED has been used in so many devices for so long now, since I believe the Galaxy S4, or maybe the S3 even. had.
No,
that,
I mean, the Super AMOLED, or the acronym that is Active Matrix Organic Light Emitting Diode Panel.
yeah,
It's that Super AMOLED is kind of like a marketing brand next
right.
to AMOLED. It's been
Yeah,
there
of
since
course.
the Galaxy S1, to be fair.
Is it the S1? Is it the
S1, and
yeah.
it really came into its own more in terms of pushing the market in it on the Galaxy S2.
Yeah.
And that was like my second or first year of uni. My good, I start to feel old when I think that far back. But yeah, they go that far back. So like what you're saying in terms of the different devices that they've used it on, it's been scalable for so many years now, So yeah.
Yeah, it's been there for so long. They had, I feel like they had the pieces, they just had to put it together to come up with this and to push LG with this.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to see how the whole thing goes, and especially with the competition, how it brings how pricing changes.
Oh yeah.
Because these TVs are just expensive. Like, we're talking the bleeding edge at this point. So how is that going to affect, how expensive can you, or how cheaply, not cheaply, how affordable can you make them?
The affordability, accessibility.
Whilst being competitive in the actual specifications and the features and the usability of the panels. Yeah. And also, what other sort of OEM is going to use those panels to create their own, TVs? Is it going to be specific to Samsung, or is this something that maybe they'll branch out and supply the panels to other companies who will bring in the QD-OLED and then go from there?
Well, I can answer that question for you because I had the privilege of attending my first CES, so I'm really glad I ticked it off my bucket list. And I was privy to see, in the controlled environment that they had, QD-OLED in action. Now, we did a video on SamMobile TV on YouTube, so for our audio listeners as well as for our video listeners, definitely check that video out. I think I'll probably link it in because I'm just more excited that finally we have a guest that mentions Samsung Display, because I'm a big display snob, as I call myself. I love everything about displays, right? It's the center point that really matters to me, amongst other things. And QD-OLED feels like an Empire Strikes Back moment. Again, any excuse to use a Star Wars pop culture reference, I cannot get away from. But it does feel like an Empire Strikes Back moment, right? It's their take on OLED, and it's literally learning from what they did with their QD or quantum dot technology. And it's basically fusing quantum dot into OLED, right? And one thing I learned, and I don't think most people know this, but Samsung Display is a separate division and company to Samsung Electronics.
Yeah.
So Samsung Display actually are outsourcing these display techs. Here's why. So Sony, with their, I believe, again, people can correct me in the comments, but I think Sony are one of the first OEMs that are going to be using QD-OLED alongside Samsung Electronics. I think it's their Sony A95K that uses QD-OLED, or QD display as they like to call it as well. Samsung Electronics themselves have actually produced a TV that is out. Lots of people are having it, have had hands on, they've got it in there. I'm seeing lots of reviews that I'm going to pretend I'm not jealous, but I am, right? I really want to use it. It's their S95B, and it comes in two sizes, 55-inch, 65-inch, 4K UHD, and it is a game changer, what we're seeing in person so far for what is meant to be a new generation software with support for 4 HDMI 2.1 ports at the full 48 gigabits per second. Ridiculous brightness when it comes to sustained in SDR and especially HDR performance. The color accuracy in things like reds, greens, and blue, especially reds. That's one thing that I experienced when I was in that controlled environment. They had a PlayStation 5 set up. I couldn't show in the video. They had a PlayStation 5 set up on a QD-OLED panel next to your traditional WRGB, WW OLED panels that we've seen LG kind of near enough perfect to its maximum ability now. And my goodness, playing Spider-Man Miles Morales, and Spider-Man's suit is red, and the HDR10 that's happening, it felt like a game changer, and it looks like that is what is translating to what's happening right now with the display panels coming out. Alienware have an ultra-wide 1440p QHD plus 34-inch monitor that uses the QD-OLED panel at the moment, and it is literally the best in class for brightness, HDR performance, pixel response for gaming. And when you've got other independent reviewers that really go deep into that review saying that if you don't mind the oddly weird 21:9 aspect ratio or whatever ultra wide, this is the monitor to get, period. Right? It is amazing. It definitely is a game changer. And obviously, to answer your question, yes, it's not exclusive to Samsung. There's already some manufacturers already that are using it, not just for TVs, but for gaming monitors. And it's looking good. It's looking good. Hearing that, how do you think that's going to expand into 2023?
I don't know. I mean, even from, it might not even be from Samsung that this kind of translates and progresses. It might be actually what's the response from LG Display.
Oh,
you know?
Yeah. Oh,
so
yeah.
It's not even necessarily that we're looking for Samsung to do something. I'm sure they will. But it's more like, how's the industry and how's everything going to react, and what kind of competition are we going to see?
Oh, yeah.
And ultimately, you know, how is this technology going to be utilized by other technology?
Yes.
You know, with the consoles, with the gaming computers,
dude.
even within cinema and within TV itself. Where are we going to go with this, and how much of it can we utilize and really make the most of it? You know, with OLEDs, there are specific, you know, on smartphones, you've got specific like UIs are built around the OLED display. Not a lot of people kind of realize this, but if you've noticed, since the introduction of OLEDs, and so many of our smartphones have OLED displays, the UI has shifted to make the most of it, to introduce more brightness, but also obviously to reduce the burn-in as well. So it's going to be sort of, what can we do with it? How's the industry going to react? And then from there, where's next? Where do you go next? You know what I mean? So there's a lot to unpack. And I think there's there's a lot to unpack, and there's also a lot to digest and figure out, you know, on the consumer side. I'm sure that, you know, Samsung Display and LG Display are miles ahead. They're probably a couple of years ahead of where we are now, behind the scenes.
In terms of R&D and what they put under the bag. Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
So, you know, it's more going to be like consumers figuring it out. But hopefully this tech becomes more affordable, because it would be nice for maybe, you know, one in every couple of homes to have some sort of OLED TV or something, you know.
Man, I agree.
Because, you know, so many people I know still have rock 1080p TVs with those huge bezels, you know. So
UHD.
It would be nice to see some kind of... Or maybe what can they do with it to make it more affordable, whether it's reducing the brightness or reducing the size of where you can go with it. Something that is an obvious trade-off to tech enthusiasts, but to the average user isn't a bigger game changer, and can still spend reasonable money on the TV and get to experience and enjoy the benefits. Because I don't know if you've had a similar experience, but you tried the PlayStation 5. It's a great console. You tried the PlayStation 5 on a good TV. It's transformed. Do you know what I mean? It's not the same. It's a different experience despite the same hardware being plugged in. So yeah, I think if more people could get more eyes and more time with OLED on a bigger scale, because obviously our smartphones mostly have OLED anyway, it could be really cool. And I think a lot of people would maybe spend more time sitting down and enjoy something in HDR, because it is such a different experience to SDR on a 1080p display. And you know, and it, again, not just for gaming. Maybe I've lent into that because I play a lot of games, but the same for TV and cinema, you know.
Dude, for the audio listeners, the video listeners can see it. Everything he's saying, it's just bringing a massive grin to my face, because it's all true. These are the difference makers. Me being lucky enough to have gotten the PS5 and the Series X, right? That was the motivation for me to actually get a console that took advantage of the newer benefits of HDMI 2.1. You know, the full 48 gigabits per second. ALLM with auto low latency mode, VRR with variable refresh rate, AMD FreeSync, you know, 4K 120 with UHD, all these things were, again, HDR10, Dolby Vision HDR. It was the motivator. And my goodness, especially with, let's just say, the PS5 just got the VRR update. And the games I was already playing that were taking advantage of 4K 120 with HDR, that were already great, I just feel that much tighter because there's no stutter, especially, and no screen tearing at all introduced. You know, the display experience makes such a, oh my goodness, it makes such a huge difference in, cliche word, being immersive, really seeing the difference in what goes into making these games be represented the way they're meant to be represented, and also TV shows and movies as well, right? I just can't wait. I can't wait to toss it up a bit of what you said about the competition to kind of wrap it up. And I love that because competition is what has brought us to this point where Samsung have innovated, in my opinion, in bringing, Samsung Display specifically have innovated in bringing a new display tech that is a turning point where now we need to see what the industry is going to respond to. Here are some of the shortcomings to QD-OLED at the moment, if you want to see it as a shortcoming. They are only being introduced in kind of standard sizes, if you want to call them that, 55 to 65 inches. There's no super large formats that you can get with 75 and 83 inches. There are no super sleek, thin bezel designs like what you were seeing with their, with their quantum LED stuff that they've got right now, like the QN900B, QN800B. There are no 8K versions. There's no 8K panels for the QD-OLED displays at the minute, right? And also there's no super small form factor with high performance at, let's just say, 42 inches, like what we're seeing with LG with their OLEDs now, making it much more accessible, where there are people that are using it as desktop display replacements because of the superior response times, high contrast ratios, great OLED tech, and HDR performance as well. And also, I think it's a partnership thing, right? Samsung TVs at the minute don't support Dolby Vision HDR. Whether that matters or not, there's no support. They do have support for HDR10, HDR10 Plus, and also things like, the adaptive refresh rate. They don't have support for NVIDIA's G-Sync tech, right? I think that's just a partnership exclusivity and agreement. So these are all the shortfalls of QD-OLED in its infancy as a first try. But my goodness, mate, as first tries go, this is a game changer. This is an industry shift. And I think I briefly mentioned it before. I think the talisman device that's going to make a difference to adopting QD-OLED, I think is going to be display form factors 14-inch and above. Right? And the reason why I say that is this. Again, had hands-on with the Galaxy Book 2 Pro 360 and the Book 2 Pro. Great laptop devices, Intel 12th Gen, ultra powerful in terms of, form factor, efficiency and whatnot. But the sad thing is, they're using Super AMOLED panels that are low in brightness compared to their, smartphone counterpart, and also they're 60 hertz. Right? When you have your Galaxy Tab S8 Plus and Ultras that are using Super AMOLED panels that are 120 hertz, it feels like a drop-off. And on top of that, when you've got your smartphones that are, pushing sustained brightness of 1,000 and above, let alone peak HDR brightness that can go up to 1,750, it feels like a massive disparity. And I think this is where QD-OLED can bridge the gap in those devices that fall short, to bring that experience parity up, where you kind of just expect that, hey, my smartphone brightness looks this way, my laptop brightness should look that way as well. My tablet brightness on a large form factor should look that way, as well as my TV and my computer should look that way. That could be like a hardware ecosystem link up from Samsung that could really tie that mismatch of what's happening, where sometimes they kind of have to drop the ball and use things like VA panels or IPS panels. Not that they're bad, but it is a drop-off when you experience OLED to that level. I don't know what else you think of that, but that's kind of my take into what 2023 could look like for QD-OLED.
Yeah, definitely. I know this is a bit of a tangent, but I find
tangents.
actually VA to be a really interesting technology.
Yeah,
And it
vertical
actually
alignment.
does a better job than I think people expect. Like
Yeah.
if you ever put a
Punches
VA
above his weight, right? Yeah.
Yeah, you compare TN, VA, and IPS for gaming monitors, for example, and
Yeah.
you just look at the contrast ratios alone.
Mm-hmm.
VA is taking that and it's winning it every time. And you look that it's maybe a little bit slower than TN, but not enough that it makes a huge difference. True. I know I say that as a really hardcore FPS gamer with a TN monitor,
baby. Yep.
right? But you know, if I wasn't so ridiculously hung up on having the fastest monitor I could possibly get, VA would be a thing. Yeah. Because I really like the way that it balances. I've had a couple of IPS monitors. I'm not sure if they've been better in recent years, but the blooming, the sort of, you get a bit of a haze. Yeah, basically, if you ever watch one of my YouTube videos, you'll notice there's always a haze in the video. That's because my lens has a load of fungus in it. But that's kind of like what it is, or what it was like using an IPS monitor. There was just like a constant haze over the top. So your contrast was never really stupidly high. And it meant that there wasn't, you know, you think of LCD monitors as not necessarily having true blacks, but it's much worse than even that on an IPS, or at least it used to be. The colors can look really cool. But then VA, I think if you're after not necessarily the most color accuracy, but just more of a fun experience, VA offers good colors as well, you know. So
it punches above its weight, man.
Definitely, and for the price. I mean, VA monitors are some of the cheapest monitors out there that you can get. So yeah, really cool technology, but obviously QD-OLED would wipe the floor with it, but maybe wouldn't be nearly as cheap at the moment, at the very least.
And again, just to wrap it up, this is not to say that, you know, your traditional LCD panels don't have a place, right? Local dimming is getting a lot better, from, you know, more zones to mini LED to, which is a whole discussion in itself. I saw micro LED, which is a very, very fascinated, evolution to its max of what local dimming on LCD panels can really bring in terms of matching the levels of OLED and also providing those high brightness that we've come to accustom with VA and IPS panels, right? So there is still a place for them. And don't get it twisted. Samsung Display are still cracking home at mini LED technology, localized dimming on LCD panels, and pushing all the way up to micro LED. You know, what that will go past when it goes for micro, could it be nano LED? Who knows? But it's just interesting to see how much of a paradigm shift QD-OLED has caused. And I'm just looking forward to 2023 on the surprise devices and form factors that could really take that to the next level. Like you said, hey, what's the competition going to be saying, man? It's going to be an interesting look, you know? So it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on, Ryan. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Mate, thank you for making the hot seat question probably be my most fun one. Yeah, I was just grinning all the way through. I'm like, yes, more display. Let time stop so we can keep going. I really, really appreciate you coming. Pretty much let the audience know where can we find you, Ryan?
So on Twitter and Instagram, it's just @_rythomas, RYTHOMAS. And on YouTube, it's Ryan Thomas, Ryan-Thomas. Yeah, that's pretty much me. I'm not a TikTok. I'm a couple of years too late for TikTok.
Oh,
I feel.
Man, TikTok is a different breed to crack, me. I'm trying, but it's a different breed to crack. But yes, people, we will have all of Ryan's socials in the description. Definitely hit him up, follow him. Does great content on YouTube, known him for many years on the platform. Great opinions, as you've heard, and discussions. And trust me, this is kind of like a filtered down version. You leave us to it, we will not stop. We will not stop. But really, really appreciate you coming on, Ryan. And thank you all for tuning in to this episode of the SamMobile Podcast. As per usual, like, subscribe, and follow us on all your favorite audio podcasting platform. Give us a rating, leave a review, turn on notifications so you don't miss any future videos on SamMobile, as well as also watching a video version on YouTube and also wherever available on podcast platforms as well. As I always like to say, stay safe during this time, and we will catch you in the next one. Peace. See you, everyone.